Whoops, sorry, you caught me. Hey, rookie, watch me pull. We're live. This is it. We're going spontaneous today, and here's our topic. I just made it up because I was kind of curious. This is it. Curious and serious. It's free for the curious, and there's a fee for the serious. Now you're probably wondering, what in the hell is that about? So I don't even know. We're really going spontaneous today, and I'm going to sit in my chair, and we're going to start talking about some stuff. This is my friend Casey Peak. My name is Brad, aka Magic Brad Goodham. I live in Friendly Fridley, the armpit of Anoka County. If they were going to give Anoka County an enema, they'd put it in Fridley.
Does the camera look a little bit blurry?
I don't know. Is it?
It looks a little bit blurry. Maybe we should wipe across it real quick.
Blurry. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Oh, I
Less
said
haze.
there was goop on
Maybe there
there.
was just a little haze right around here, and I'm like, ooh, what's that going on?
Well, purple haze, that's what it was. Well, your wife should know about that technique because she's a photographer, and that's what photographers used to do to create a fade thing.
Right, yep, that's
Vaseline.
what it is. Mm-hmm.
They used to put Vaseline around the lens.
That's true, that you did.
See, so that's all it was. It was just a professional technique is all I was doing. And so we don't really have a topic with this show. It's kind of more Joe Rogan-ish, and we just talk about whatever comes up.
Yep.
And I don't even know what.
We need a guest next time, though.
Huh?
I said we need a guest next time, though. Maybe we can find a guest
What
who
do you
wants
mean?
to hang out with us for a little while.
Oh, you mean somebody to sit on the couch?
So yeah, somebody to sit on the couch and we can chat with them and harass them a little bit.
Now, I
and
take
talk about
that-
randomness.
I take that as he's getting bored with me.
No, not at all. I just think it would be fun for the audience to be able to have somebody else to hear.
That's an interesting subject, but it starts getting more and more complicated that way.
It
True.
does. That is true. That is true.
Like me in a networking situation, I'd rather talk one-on-one like we're doing now.
Yeah.
And if there's another person, I would kind of just sit back.
Yeah, I tend to do that.
I kind of do that.
If you notice, whenever Elizabeth was here, I did the same thing.
Yeah, we're same that way. So, ideally, it would be nice if there was a lot of people that were really interested in what we're doing and they wanted to come here and participate and
Yeah, that'd be cool.
do tequila shots and.
I don't know about the tequila shots, but
No.
fill up the room.
No, I was just kidding about the tequila shots. I don't want to. I used to drink that stuff. That's nasty.
Apparently, it's the easiest thing for the body to digest and break down. Apparently, all the other sugars are more complex, and it's harder to break down.
This guy knows a little bit about everything. It's kind of one of these.
I just learned that one recently. I was reading an article about it, and they were talking about how it's easier for the body to break it down. I don't know if I entirely believe it. It's what I read.
Well, the thing is, the reason I'm not into the alcohol thing is because I quit drinking because I had some driving situations and stuff. But hindsight,
too much fun.
I still had fun. Never enough fun. But I was drunk, and the alcohol goes into your brain and does something to it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's good. The sugar, yeah, you digest the sugar, fine, but the alcohol is killing brain cells. Because, and I learned this when I had to go to treatment. His name was Elmer Flowers, was my treatment guy. And he did a demonstration with 2 glasses of water. One was full of vodka, the other one was full of water. And they took the 2 angleworms and dropped them in the glasses of water. And then we had to figure out which is the water and which was the vodka.
So you waited for the angleworm to die.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that was the vodka.
Yeah.
So there's my reason for not ingesting alcohol. It'll kill you. In fact, I believe that people that are drinking are killing themselves.
Well, I mean, alcohol has been a part of human society for, let's see, earliest evidence of it was
A long time.
6,000 years ago, I think. It was they found like, I think it was a clay container that was used to make beer. And it was just spontaneous beer. They would literally just take the grain and they were picking it. And then what they think is that probably the first time that the people discovered beer is that they literally were just taking grain, throwing it in, and then it rained. and so they had to like take cover. And then they came back like a day or two later, and oh yeah, hey, that's where I left my pot. And then it was already starting to bubble, and they were like, "What's that?" They drank it. And they're like, "Oh, that's kind of good."
Designed by accident.
Yeah.
Well, there's a different topic right there because yesterday we went to the Bell Museum
Yeah.
and there was this old guy that was going to teach us all about the universe, and we started talking about light years and how this galaxy is so far away, and there's billions of stars. The amount of stars in the universe is like more than the grains of the sand on the planet and on every beach.
Mm-hmm.
And you start thinking about that. It's like, so you just got on talking about what did you say, 4,000 or 6,000 years?
That's like 4,000.
Who the hell knows that? Because some guy found something, he dug it up and goes, looks like, cut the rings on the tree and count those rings back and ran out of rings. Now,
Carbon dating.
Carbon dating.
Carbon dating.
How does that work?
They take a sample, they hit it with it's like I can't remember what it's called. I think it's like a mass spectrometer type thing, and they measure
me
these
already.
isotopes and
Lost me
all
already.
this kind of stuff. It's very similar to how they check the degradation of cesium atoms and things like that.
Cesium atoms. I don't know what that is either.
It's a nuclear physics thing.
Yeah, but those are some of the things that make me crazy. They talk about this light years and this stuff that happened billions of years ago, like dinosaurs and all that.
Yeah, well, I mean, when they get that old, it's like the range of error. It's like even though that it's only like it's infinitesimal.
Yeah.
So it's very small, like the range of error. But when they do the carbon dating, and they're going back to like the time of like early dinosaurs, we're talking like millions of years, right?
Millions
So
of years.
we're talking about like dealing with like trilobites, things like that. They're super old. Well, now if you have a small and a little tiny small range of error, it now means hundreds of thousands of years, so that you could be wrong.
The trajectory.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Like the further back you go, the more that they're not really sure about time frame. But the closer you get to now, the more that they're pretty certain about time frame. But I mean, then you get into certain things where anthropologically they don't really want to admit that they don't understand anything. So like you end up with these weird pyramids that are out in the middle of nowhere, because they have this understanding of the way that civilization was supposed to be, and civilization is no older than this and everything else. But then they find these structures that are clearly, like 10,000 years old, and they find these giant structures, and they go, well, yeah, because like it's like the whole island was this structure as they're starting. There's one of them in Indonesia, on the Indonesian islands. So there's this one specific island. I can't remember what the name of it is, but there's pyramids were there, and there's these giant blocks, and none of the rock is native there. So they went and they cut it from somewhere else and then brought it in there. And so they can date it back to during the Ice Age, whenever we had that giant ice wall up here.
So it might just slid on the ice down to Bali or Indonesia.
The what?
The big rock might have just slid on the ice over to the Indonesian islands.
Well, no, because it was still warm there. I mean, we had a big ice wall up here because it was, we were near permafrost up this far.
Let me reframe this a little bit back to my little trip at the Bell Museum, because they're talking about all these things that are just incomprehensible. Would that be the way I
incomprehensible?
Incomprehensible. Because we have, how old are you? You're 37, something like that?
44.
44. You haven't even gotten halfway to 100 yet.
Yeah, I know.
And now we're talking about things from 60 billion years ago.
I know, right?
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So as this guy was going through this thing, he was talking about this spectrum of colors. That's how the telescopes work, because there's only a certain spectrum that we can see. Yeah. There's another whole spectrum that we can't see. And just like we were talking about with the sound same thing.
Yeah.
There's sounds we can't hear. They're white noise that we can't hear that only
Yep.
certain. And then you go and you're talking about how a meteor shower could come through the Earth, and it's possible we wouldn't even get hit because most of it is space. The stuff
Right.
would burn up, and it would kind of just like pass right through each other
Mhm.
because stuff isn't physical. This isn't physical. It's got molecules and atoms and protons and neutrons, electrons, and they just kind of. So it boils down to
Mhm.
what we believe. So
Mhm.
we believe in a three-dimensional world that this is physical and we're really here.
Right.
And then these people that are coming up with these ideas that these things happened millions of years ago, maybe there's somebody in that spectrum that we can't see or hear or comprehend that's programming us to think this stupid shit.
Right.
And maybe all this stuff that these scientists, carbon dating and all that stuff, it's a bunch of made up stuff that's just belief.
Did they get into how all time is actually happening right now?
No, this is more about space.
Yeah.
I got into this stuff in my own head.
Right.
But yes, I've thought about that.
Well, that's the
stuff
same
too.
thing. Whenever they're talking about space and they're talking about the distance and their theory of relativity, and they're talking about how
Right.
as you approach the speed of light, how for you you're still experiencing normal time, but whenever you were to like say go to the sun and back, right? And if you were to go to the sun and back and you were heading and you were going like near the speed of light and you come back, all of a sudden, you know, time progressed for us at an exponential rate,
Mhm.
whereas for you, it just seemed like, you know, a few moments.
In
So
theory.
what is it? 3 minutes, I think, is what it is to the sun or something like that. So you go 3 minutes to the sun and 3 minutes back if you're going the speed of light. So it'd be 6 minutes grand total if we could do that, just and back, right? And then not in theory, they've actually proven this one. It's really cool. They
Okay.
took
Proven it by their belief.
no. They proved it by taking an atomic clock, putting it on a rocket that we launched, and then we launched that rocket, and we launched it into space, and then we launched it, and then we recovered it.
And you
Right.
saw this on CNN?
My grandfather was actually part of the building some of the stuff for the
And he
experiment.
told you the story?
Um,
I'm being sarcastic.
yeah, that's where I
now.
originally learned. That is where I originally learned about it. But yeah, so basically, then whenever they retrieved it all, when they retrieved it all, the atom was not. So this atomic clock was not synced anymore with what our time was on the planet. So we actually did show that how fast you're going does actually affect time.
Right.
So it was pretty fascinating.
But if you're in this room and you talk about the like the quantum stuff and the wave particle,
Yeah.
what you focus on. So if we're in this room and there's three of us,
Yeah.
and I tell you this story,
Uh-huh.
and the story you're going bullshit, it's not true, I don't believe it.
Uh-huh.
But I say enough stuff and you start to get convinced, and the third person's going, I don't believe it either. Pretty soon I convince you, now there's 2 against 1, and all of a sudden he goes, you know what, you're right. They do have that atomic clock that did that thing. So yeah, that's proof.
Well, no, I mean, there was a whole, yeah, it's interesting. So they did this whole experiment, but this is to your point, right? You were talking about space, and I was mentioning it. Did they get into that aspect about time? Well, apparently, because of the fact that you, in theory, could like be on a different planet in a different area and observing us, you're not actually observing us now. You're observing us in the past, right? Now, let's say you were approaching the speed of light, heading towards us, right? Well, now you're actually potentially experiencing our future,
Correct.
right?
In theory, yeah.
In theory. So time is actually more like a wave packet, and all of it's kind of happening now. And so the theory of it goes that there's like 3 different theories that they have, but essentially all of them agree that the time that we're experiencing is not actually realistic. That we only experience it that way,
Right.
because the fact that we're very 3-dimensional.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I love pondering that kind of stuff. And then there's the future that I believe we create, whatever this is going to be. And
Yeah.
then there's our past. If we were to go there and say you were to be able to travel back into the past
Right.
and you killed your mother, would you exist?
Right. Exactly. There's that interesting. Yeah. So according to this theory, is that the past already happened, and essentially like everything up into where you exist, all the way into the past, already happened. And that's like the newest theories that are out. They like agree that like all of this is all happening at the same time.
Right.
But then the future hasn't been created yet because the people who are in the now haven't yet decided what the future is going to be or how to create that future. But then the other theories actually say if you're sufficiently powerful enough and you were able to like move around like that, that all the time literally is happening right now. And they're saying that, therefore the future is already written too.
Right.
But which future is that? Is that this future? Is it a future of a different dimension?
It's
Whatever dimension they were in.
Yeah, it's whatever you can imagine.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, because Monica, people used to say you can't do anything about the past. The past is the past. It's kind of in concrete.
Mm-hmm.
But Monica has a program. Monica, my wife, she has a program where you actually recreate your past.
Yeah.
By changing your beliefs.
Right.
Here's an example. When I had my little situation where my parents abandoned me by going to the bar, my thinking was, Mom and Dad abandoned me and left me here by myself. I'm scared.
Yeah.
And now I changed my thinking, realizing that forgive them, for they know not what they do. They didn't abandon me. They went out to have some fun, go to the bar. They came home and they gave me the Nut Goody candy bar as a reward. So I was just at home enjoying myself as a little kid. They were out having fun. Mom and Dad's having fun. And when they come home, I'm going to get a candy bar.
Right.
Same thing happened, but my belief of it changed.
Right.
So what's truth?
Yeah.
They're both truth. I get to pick. So that's where you end up getting into the observer versus the wave particle thing.
Yeah.
Observing this truth or this truth. So do we have a future? Do we have a past? No, we just got what's now. And whatever my future is, that's what I believe.
Right.
And then you get into we're going to get into this other stuff that you and your wife are doing too, if you want to.
Sure, we can talk about
the
that.
Telling the story thing, because
Yeah.
that can be healing for a person. And I lost my train of thought, but it's going to come back sometime. The whole
You were
present
talking
moment.
about reflecting on the past and analyzing it and coming up with a different story in your head.
Yeah, exactly. So it can be therapeutic, whatever your belief structure
Yeah.
is. And if you're in this position, say for business success, I want to be a millionaire, or I want to increase my rates so I make more money. But then there's something, I'm not worthy. That's a belief.
Right.
I can't do that because I'll lose all my clients and then I won't have anything. That's a belief.
I had a very similar talk actually with a lady who came here just the other day. We were sitting down and we were talking about that particular aspect of things. And I mentioned that. I mentioned that. I was like, yeah, so when you're reflecting on your past, like a lot of times trauma that you experience, like, because a lot of people are talking about right now about generational trauma and overcoming generational trauma. Well, what is generational trauma? I would say it is a kind of societal belief of what trauma is, right?
I agree.
Because like, let's go back to the ancient Greeks, right? Of just an example. So the ancient Greeks, whenever they would go to war, and whenever they weren't at war, it was actually very common for their male warriors to take lovers among the other males that were there, and oftentimes they were younger, right? So, which is like super traumatizing. Like people would see that now, older man taking, a 16-year-old boy because they were sent off to war at 16, right? Taking a little 16-year-old boy as their lover. Oh, that's horrible and blah blah. And that's and I'm not going to disagree with that in our society. That's absolutely horrible. In ancient Greece, it wasn't horrible. That was just done all the time, and none of them were traumatized by it.
Well, in Bali, they marry very, very young. They marry and they super young.
Right.
We wouldn't comprehend that. That's you wait till you're 21
Oh.
or whatever the legal marriage age is. Is there one?
Yeah, I mean 16 if you have parents' permission.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, 16 if you have parents' permission. 18 you can marry if you want, and I don't think there's any states where it's 21.
That's kind of weird, the whole age thing.
Age thing is super, super weird. It's super weird. But again, it comes back to this interesting concept of time. But going back to what I was saying though, we're sitting there, we're having this conversation. Well, my commentary, that was the whole point of it, was that a lot of the trauma that we receive from things that happen to us, a lot of that trauma is actually trauma that's put on us because we're told how to feel or respond in that situation.
Yes.
So I use my own trauma, for example. Like I had some trauma whenever I was a kid. A lot of trauma when I was a kid, but I had this particular incident that happened. It was sexual trauma with I was molested basically, and as a kid, whenever you experience that, yeah, it's traumatic in its own way, but there is far more trauma that actually gets happened with everyone else's reaction.
Totally. This is a different kind of topic, but when my dad died when I was in 9th grade, the thing I didn't like was all the people coming up and telling me how sorry they were.
Yeah.
That made it worse.
Right. Right. I know, right? Sometimes, especially if you know it's coming and somebody had like a really long life and they lived like a really good life or something like that, or maybe they died doing what they love. Like let's take a Steve Irwin type accident, right? That man lived an adventurous, amazing life, and then to go up to him and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, your husband got stung by a stingray." Dude, that guy is putting his head in alligators' mouths. Are you gonna be sorry whenever his alligator like goes and bites down on it? I mean, no. I mean, I wouldn't want to hear, "I'm sorry, your dad got his head bit by an alligator." No, I'd be like, my dad died doing what he loved. What an amazing man. He had an amazing adventurous life. People are going to be talking about him for decades to come. I mean, that's a whole different way of looking at it.
It's a matter of perception. And that's, I get into the magic thing of how do you perceive. Like when my sister died, people would say, "I'm sorry," but I'm thinking, why, if you believe that there's a place called heaven and you're a Christian and it's a better spot, you're sorry that my sister's now in a better spot?
Right.
And it's a different, maybe they're sorry that I might feel pain.
Right.
Well, maybe I don't. Maybe I'm happy that she's dead, which would be kind of morbid. Not really.
Be a little morbid, but
not if she's in heaven and loving it.
Right.
And I can have those conversations, and I'm jealous now.
Yeah.
I want to go, and I can't commit suicide because you're not supposed to do that.
I've actually never understood like certain things in that particular belief system where you have this heaven, you have this whole amazing thing, and everybody wants to get there. And then whenever people die, everybody's like, "Oh, I'm so happy for them. Oh, they get to be in this better place." But yet everybody is sad about death and they're afraid of death.
That's because it's unknown, I think.
Right. Of course it's because it's unknown, but it's also a very interesting juxtaposition, because if you really truly believe that whenever you die that you're going to go to heaven, and because you're a Christian and because you go to confession, I'll say for example, right? Because that's a perfect example. If you're Catholic and you go and you confess on a regular basis, then yeah, you're kind of absolved of your sins and you get to go to heaven, right? I mean, that's part of the way that it works. There's like there's a really funny movie called Dogma that actually has this whole thing in there about it. So anyhow, yeah, so I never understood like why are these people like super afraid of death, and then they're always like having these.
Let's talk about that conversation a little bit. That would be a fun one because there's the religion.
Yeah.
And then there's the spiritual.
Right.
The religion is the book, and you read it and you believe things that, that's what happened. You're going to go to heaven. Heaven's up in this place. And
right.
You believe that.
And heaven is always up. It's very interesting.
And hell's got fire in it.
And usually it's down.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
You're going to go to hell. And that's what the book might have said, and whoever read it interpreted it that way. Then they stood at the church and preached that to people, and people said heaven and hell.
Right.
To me, heaven is a state of mind. I'm at peace,
Mm-hmm.
and hell is a state of chaos and frustration and torment. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the religious part of it. And like you come into some of these things like thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a moral thing. You shouldn't kill people. But why is that sort of a spiritual religious thing? It's because it doesn't make any sense to kill something because I mean you might kill an animal and eat it for sustenance, but you don't kill a human and eat that because
At least if you're not a cannibal, you
right.
don't.
That's what I was getting at. Is that's another belief system.
Right.
But that some people think that it's okay to kill animals and dogs and all that kind of stuff. Eat dogs. You can't eat dogs. Well, they do in certain places. So it ends
we
up
were
being
talking
a
about
belief.
Indonesia. Don't they
Yeah.
eat dog in Indonesia?
I think they do.
Yeah.
So it ends up being a belief thing. And what you're talking about was with people, oh, she's going to go to heaven, she's going to go to hell. To me, it's more of a space. And if you're good with yourself and when you're going to die, you're going to die. I just don't want to die painfully, like in a fire.
Yeah. I'm yeah, exactly. I'm not afraid of death. I am afraid.
I don't think I am. I think
I am possibly afraid of the process. Like I don't
want
want
toothpicks
to.
under my fingernails until I die or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh my God. If you ever get a splinter under your finger, have any of you ever gotten a splinter under your fingernail? Oh my God, it's so painful. Can you imagine that weird bamboo torture that they do in some countries? Where they do,
Until
like,
you
the
eventually you
splinters of
give up the
bamboo?
will to live.
Yeah.
But that's
Ah.
a different way of looking at it versus a religion. Because when people make fun of like all those people that swing those pendulums and stuff, and they think that they can tell what to do with a pendulum or the chakra system, that's a
Dowsing?
bunch of bunk. Yeah, that dowsing thing and everything. But then you see these Jewish guys with these blocks on their heads and these little curly things, or the Catholics with the incense, and they're doing incense down the aisle and all that. What the hell are they doing? It's all weird shit.
I've had some very weird experiences with dowsing, actually.
With dowsing?
Yeah, dowsing in particular, because dowsing is actually a practice that was practiced in the not in a lot of places. It was, but it is a very Western world thing. So it's very interesting that people have gotten these interesting views of dowsing, and they group dowsing in with some of the other more esoteric beliefs, because dowsing was not actually esoteric. Dowsing still today is utilized to do things like find bodies of water and stuff, right? It's still actually used, but it was actually a Western world product that people would use. So, but the belief is that you can use dowsing to find all kinds of things as long as it's a sufficient force, right? That you were sufficiently aware enough and that you have a sufficient amount of focus. So like a lot of people are like, yeah, it's your muscles reacting and all this bunch of stuff, but there's some aspects of it that are kind of unexplainable. Maybe it is a subconscious thing. Maybe you're actually just telling yourself where it is, but it's still weird that you would know where things are,
Dowsing
right?
specifically for water or dowsing for other things?
You could be dowsing for, dowsing for water. I have actually seen people douse for water, and I've actually been really surprised by the results that people have had dowsing for water.
See, water I can grasp because when the moon brings in the tides and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the moon is affecting water, and
Yeah.
our bodies are full of water. So maybe there's some kind of connection with, water is kind of important stuff.
Yeah.
So there might be more of a connection with your little dowsing rods or whatever to find
Mm-hmm.
the water.
There's multiple different ones too. There's the dowsing rods where you have two rods and you hold them like this in your hand, and then they literally will go like this and turn inward.
Right.
And then whenever they cross,
the little tube so that they can pivot.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll put them in there and you'll hold them like that, and then they'll go like this to turn left, they'll go like that to turn right, and then they cross whenever you're above it.
Right. And some of that is the sensitivity of how easily they move.
Mm-hmm.
So it's similar like a pendulum.
Yeah.
It very easily can go in a circle or in a line.
Yeah.
And some people say, well, that's a bunch of bunk, but maybe there's something with the water in your body that makes your muscles react a
Right.
certain way and say, okay, let's go for the water.
So it's interesting. So I have played with dowsing a little bit. I play with all kinds of various different esoteric things and
What does
stuff like
esoteric mean?
just things that are not really in the scientific world, I guess would be a way of explaining it. So like, a lot of people do like energy healing and all this bunch of different stuff, or like
Woo,
your wife deals with a
woo
lot of
stuff.
esoteric stuff,
Huh.
like, so
I kind of
woo-woo
figured
stuff.
that's what
Yeah,
it meant.
woo-woo stuff. So I messed with that. I've messed with dowsing a bit, and we have this pendulum at home, and every now and then, like, we'll misplace something or something like that, and my wife will be like, hey, go get that thing, go douse for it. And I'll be like, no, it never works that well for me. And she's like, no, go do it every single time. You even say it doesn't work for you, and every single time it works for you. Go do it. So I don't know if I really believe that dowsing works for like dowsing for anything. However, she is right. I use the dowsing and I tend to get a very interesting result that tends to be at least somewhat close to what I'm actually trying to find or what I'm looking for. And it's really interesting that it happens on a regular basis. And so, I mean, a lot of people would say, like, well, that's saying that dowsing's working. I wouldn't say that the dowsing was working. I didn't actually find the object. So I don't think it really worked. I don't care if it got me in the vicinity and a day later I found it near where I was dowsing. I didn't find the object. And that was the whole entire point of it. So it got me in a general vicinity, which is why something like for bodies of water, I would believe. Or if you're looking for like mining, they used to employ dowsers all the time for mines to look for like large pockets of minerals and stuff. They would employ it all the time. They actually really fully believed in it. Now, it was only correct like, you know, 50, 60% of the time, but that's better than randomly digging holes everywhere.
Well, again, you go back to the perception of things. What if, say, 50% of the time you used the dowsing rods and 50% of the time you didn't? You still got there, whether they're in your hands or not. So
Yeah.
was the dowsing rods that did it, or was it just the law of possibility or whatever?
No, I don't know. Like, well, I mean, we're talking about finding minerals or metal in the ground. And if you're dealing with like finding minerals or metal in the ground, I mean, that could literally be anywhere.
I know, but there's
So
some of these people.
you're at like, if you were randomly digging holes, you're really maybe gonna hit it at 0.0001% of the time whenever you dig a hole.
I know, but then there's the possibility of someone believing in a higher power, and they pray to God, who is all that is all
Sure.
knowing, and God gives you a message that the minerals are over there. So you go over there.
I don't know. Like, again, there are a lot of weird circumstances that people have where they end up having dreams about stuff like that. I mean, even in the Bible, they talk about having dreams that are prophetic and
Well, my
seeing
wife does
things
a lot
in
of
their
dream
dreams.
work.
Yeah,
That's the stuff she does.
yeah, exactly. That's what
And
she
weird
specializes
shit
in.
happens when she tells me about her dream and how it was connected with other stuff.
Yeah.
So
I
the
don't remember
unexplainable
many of
stuff.
my dreams anymore, but that kind of stuff used to happen to me all the time too. And it's weird. It's really weird when that
It
connects.
is weird. I don't dream much at all, but I had one a while ago. It was one of these lucid type dreams where I heard gunshots. I
Uh-huh.
heard a huge explosion,
Mm-hmm.
and then I waited a little bit, and I was like awake but not awake, one of those things. Then I heard these gunshots, and then I just sat around waiting for it. There's got to be some sirens or something. It
Mm-hmm.
just happened. There was a big explosion and a bunch of gunshots.
Yeah.
So that's something serious. Where's the sirens?
Right.
And then I waited and I waited and waited for 15, 20 minutes and nothing happened. And when Monica woke up, I asked her, did you hear the explosion and the gunshots? She goes, I didn't hear them. But to me, it was very, very real.
Right.
So what was that? It was in the dream world
Yeah.
that I believed it.
Yeah, I've had a couple of weird ones lately that were similar. Like I would be asleep and then all of a sudden hear a big bang, like somebody fell off of the upper bunk. Like one of the kids fell off the upper bunk or
Oh, it's
something like that.
like everything shakes. Yeah.
Um, yeah, not necessarily like everything shakes, but because I'm on a raised bed, so and my bed is like it negates. I have a Tempur-Pedic. Tempur-Pedics like pretty much eliminate vibration,
Okay.
so I wouldn't have necessarily felt
Okay.
that,
But you heard it.
but I could hear a big boom, right, and then be enough that it would jolt me awake, and I'd be awake, and I'd lay there for a minute, and I'd listen, and I'd see, is there anybody in the house? Is there any kids crying? Was that a cat? Was that a dog? I'm waiting. I'm waiting to hear something. Like I'm just waiting, right? And nothing. So finally, I get up and I look around a little bit, and everything's fine. I'm like, okay, going back to bed.
So it wasn't a visual dream; it was an audible dream that you heard things that
Yeah,
were not.
yeah. Dreams are very interesting though. Like going to dream interpretation, and then maybe prophetic dreams and stuff like that. Like I have definitely had stuff like that where uh well, this one's not me, but this one was my grandfather. My grandfather woke up. He was sleeping. He oftentimes would, whenever he was alive, he would sit inside his recliner chair, his big old lazy boy that he would sit in, and
Mhm.
he would,
My chair.
and he would turn on. Oh yeah, he was my chair, and he would turn on a show, and he would fall asleep like with the History Channel going, and oftentimes it was about war of some kind, and he'd just be watching it, and he'd be asleep, or Nature Channel, and he was asleep, and he had a dream about my cousin, and he just like showed up, and he woke up, and then he actually saw an apparition of my cousin, and he had like shocked him, and then found out that my cousin had died.
Okay.
So there's like ones like that. And I think a lot of people have ones that
They
are
do.
like
I've
that.
got one.
Yeah.
My brother, when my dad died, my brother was up north, motocross, motorbiking,
Yeah.
and they were out in the wilderness. There's no phones. He didn't know cell phones or nothing like that. And all of a sudden, he stops and tells his buddy, "I need to go home." No idea why. He says, "Okay." And he went home, and it was because my dad had died.
Wow. It's ones like that that are pretty trippy. Like,
Right. You get these little chills,
it's
and you think,
weird.
okay, there's got to be some kind of higher power in that. It could be a coincidence, I guess, but
There's too many
it's too weird.
there's too many weird ones like that that I have heard. Yeah, that is not the only time that I've heard
Yeah.
ones like that. There was a lady I met, she lost one of her kids. And she literally woke up and said, I need to call my daughter. And she told the story. And she called and the police picked up. She had just died in a car accident, and they were pulling her. They were pulling her out at the time, and they were just getting ready to go through her stuff.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And how often do you have that situation where something doesn't happen? Where all of a sudden I had this feeling I had to go, so I came home. So oh, nothing, it's all good. That don't happen that much.
That don't happen very much. No,
I don't
I have a
really-
feeling I need to go home, and then you go home and nothing's going on. Yeah, so this one happened to a friend of mine. They had a feeling like they just had to go home. They just like all of a sudden out of nowhere they went to go in the car, and they were about to drive, and then I can't remember what something that happened. It was like a bird flew on the front of their car or something like that and wouldn't move. Like it was right in front of it. And then all of a sudden they got this weird feeling and they went, something's wrong. And then they went inside and they looked around, and apparently the pilot light had gone out on their gas heater, one of those old wall heaters,
Mhm.
where it's a vertical wall heater and they have the pilot light at the very bottom of it. Yeah. So it had gone out. So there was all of a sudden they go in there and they're like, "That's gas." And if they had left,
So it was the canary in the coal mine.
yeah. Well, I mean, it was outside though, where the bird with the bird.
Okay.
So it was more like the canary outside of the coal
Outside of the
mine
coal
that
mine.
decided to
Don't go in there.
panic before it went in. Yeah.
It's fun thinking about all those bizarre, weird things that end up
Yeah.
happening that are unexplainable. But it's weird that someone doesn't have that open mind to think that something like that could
Mhm.
possibly happen.
Yeah.
You know, like part of me believes there's a God because of situations where I had a situation where everything fell apart and I didn't have any money and I just finished up a small job that I hated, but I was due $600. So I had $600. And I jumped in my car and I went to California.
Yeah.
How did I survive in California for 2 years with $600? It just happened. Stuff just happened and delivered things, and I got magic gigs and I got opportunities, and I stayed out there for 2 years when I didn't have anything.
Right.
How did that work? It's kind of
Yeah.
miraculous. Or I remember situations when I was doing magic full time as a magical entertainer for corporate events where, oh my God, I'm late, rush hour traffic, shit, what am I going to do? I got to get over across town. I get in, it's on time. I get there on time. How did I get through rush hour traffic and stuff and get to my destination on time?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that time works that way. Sometimes it's not, time isn't tick, tick, tick. It's
No.
just, it's okay. You'll get there.
Yeah.
And if
That
you
lady
believe in it.
that lady that I was meeting at this weekend, like we all sat down and we started talking, and she says to me, she goes, "Oh, I'm probably gonna have to go." And she looks at her phone and she goes, "Oh my God, like it's only whatever time it was." She goes, "Time is slowing down. It's making time for us." So it's very interesting, like some of those perceptions happen that way.
Oh, the
But
perception of
going
time.
back to the perception of time, and then also how we have like cognition about things coming up. So here in Minneapolis, right? Before the riots happened, it was about a week, and yeah, it was. It was about a week before the riots. All of a sudden, it was because it was during the pandemic and all of that stuff was happening, and it was about a week before those riots happened. All of a sudden, Elizabeth tells me, she goes, "Oh my God, I think we need to go on vacation for a while." And I said, "Why?" She goes, "Oh, we're gonna have riots in the street in a week." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? We're not going to have riots in the street in a week." She's like, "Oh, no, we're going to have riots in the street in a week." And I'm like, "Okay, we're going to have riots in the street in a week." I didn't realize that she was having a kind of psychic flash. I thought she was just being paranoid, right? Because during the pandemic, everybody was being paranoid, right?
Right.
A lot of people were having paranoid moments. So I just thought she was having a paranoia moment. And she meant literally there was going to be riots in the street for a week, and she kept talking about it. She kept telling people about it and everything else. Lo and behold, a week later, there were riots in the street.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting.
I think stuff like that happens. I mean, it's too, and some people say there are no coincidences. I hyphenate coincidences as co-incidents, where two incidents are happening at the same time. So to
Mm-hmm.
me, that's sort of a deja vu situation. Like,
Sure.
this is my philosophy on deja vu. You want to hear this one?
Mm-hmm.
That we have an infinite amount of time, right?
Yep.
Infinite amount of time. But there's a finite amount of molecules and protons and neutrons.
Sure.
So it's inevitable that in an eternity, those molecules are going to rearrange in the same way again.
Yeah.
So a deja vu is they finally rearranged and come around to the same time. And that's why you have a little span, then it's gone, because now they're dispersed again. It's not
Interesting.
concrete anymore. So that's my theory on eternity is we've already done this. We
Interesting.
really have already done this because there's so many molecules.
When I was a kid, I used to have deja vu moments all the time. But the deja vu moments that I had were because I dreamt it ahead of time. And I would literally dream, but they were always like, they were dreams that I didn't really think about ahead of time because it was always mundane crap. It was never anything
Oh, like you
that
had a
was like,
dream you're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something?
no, like certain conversations, like the conversation we're having right now.
Okay.
Like, so I would just like,
Mundane?
when I was, well, this is not a mundane conversation, but I'm just saying, you know, like this is, it's a normal everyday occurrence that, you know, people sit around and they talk though. This is what I'm talking about. So like, it was a regular thing. I was sitting around inside a car with my mom, right, for example, right? And then I would have a deja vu moment where I was talking to my mom and we talked about a very specific subject in a very specific way, and there was very specific answers that were given. And then there was a moment, like literally even inside the dream, that was like, whoa, deja vu. I've had this happen before. And then like it would start happening in real life and I'd go, whoa, deja vu. I've had this happen before.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
you're having a deja vu of a deja vu?
You're having a deja vu moment because you had dreamt what is actually happening. Like that was me. I would have dreamt what was actually happening like the night before, or maybe 2 nights before, right? But it was a moment in time. But it wasn't like I had any deja vu moments that would have actually been, hey, duck, something bad's gonna happen if you don't duck. Oh, deja vu. You know what I mean? And then you duck and then something goes flying over your head. It was always like conversations or very not really big moments. It wasn't like, you know, somebody looked at me and said, kid, you're adopted, or anything weird like that I dreamed like ahead of time, right? I'm not adopted, but
That you know of.
Oh, I'm definitely not adopted. I look so much like my dad. It's like comically like my dad. And then there's other times in my life where I look ridiculously like my mom. And my kids look very much
So
like
wouldn't it be
the people
weird
in
if
my
you
family.
found out your dad had a twin brother and that's who adopted you? Just kidding. You're not
That would
adopted.
be weird. That would be weird.
You're not
That is
to be
funny that you
adopted.
said that. That's funny that you said that. My grandfather had a twin brother, but you know, he died. It was either at birth or right before birth. Like his twin died. It was very interesting.
Well, my brother's got straight blonde hair or light hair, and I've got the curly stuff, and I look like my dad. But my mom used to say, "You be good, or we're taking you back to your real parents." She used to say that shit to me. That's not it's a little bit of trauma, right?
Yeah.
Until you decide that you don't like your mom. So yeah, take me back.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, just talking about trauma, so you were saying you wanted to mention about
Yeah, let's
the
finish that up.
thing
We got
were doing,
another
yeah.
10. What we got? 10 minutes. Another 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Can you guys handle this? 10 minutes.
So my wife and I, Elizabeth, her TikTok is Your Authentic Reflections. You can find her under Elizabeth Peak or Your Authentic Reflections on TikTok. And myself, the TikTok I'm doing it under is Myco Shift. I have 2 TikToks, but that's the one that I'm doing this under. We started doing a TikTok a day challenge, and she went to a talk. It was at eWomen something or other.
eWomen
group.
Network.
That's the one. EWN. eWin. Yeah. So it was a great talk. Like she really talked about it quite a lot afterwards. She was super hyped about it, and it was a lady who was presenting it about sharing your story. And she said, great things happen whenever you share your story. She said that you just need to just do it. Don't worry about, you know, the repercussions, whether people are going to like it or not like it, because the people who like it will gravitate towards you. People who don't like it will go away. And that's totally fine. And what you really need is attract the people who will like it. And she talked about her story quite often and ended up having some kind of incident that ended up happening where they ended up giving her a $95,000 camper. The head of Camping World gave one away to her because so many people knew her story that they were telling her story. which you then brought up, be remarkable.
Yes.
And that was where you brought up the being
Seth Godin.
remarkable. Yeah.
Seth Godin had a book called, I think it was a book called Be Remarkable. And it was about being, so that people know what to talk about you. You got to talk to this person because this person does this.
Yeah.
They know it so well that they end up spreading the word for you.
Right. And that was basically what this lady was talking about. So she came out of it and she's like, we have been trying to tell our story for a long time, and we've been trying to use social media for, marketing and for our own personal gains in some areas for a very long time. And we've been having a hard time just figuring out even what to talk about or what to do about it. And she was like, both of us have very unique stories, and we have a very bizarre life, right? And people find us interesting. So why not just talk about our stories? I mean, my stories usually traumatize other people, and her stories usually, make people inspired and make them kind of cry a little bit, and they go along the story with her because she grew up in a cult, and it was very unique, odd experience. And so she talks about what that felt like. And the last one, you should listen to it if you guys want to. It was about her brother unaliving himself, right? And that's the socially acceptable way to say it now.
I know, it's weird.
Yeah. It's because of social media. Social media will shadow ban you if you say other words. So it's really strange. But anyhow, so he unalived himself, and it really sent her down this big rabbit hole. And so she wants to share the story, but we have trouble sharing our own stories. So she tells me, she says, hey, how about if for the very first time we go and we sit down and I tell your story and you tell my story, and then we get us talking about what the story is. That's not exactly how it worked, but it was a great way to get started. And now we're trying to tell our own story. And for me, I'm a projector type under human design. And usually that means that other people have to prompt you or ask you, which I actually find is very true. If other people ask me things, I tend to be able to just jump out there, and I know a lot about a lot, and I can do it. But if, like I'm just sitting there trying to come up with something, I'm like, and I don't know what to do. So, as my side of the shtick that I do, I have Elizabeth ask me questions about my life, and usually she starts telling me what she's going to ask off camera, and then on camera, sometimes she'll ask a different question, and so I'll go, no, the other way you asked it is better. And so I'm going to answer that one. Well, here's the question she did ask.
Why do you ask it off the camera?
Well, she tells me what she's going to ask off the camera, so that way I can kind of start to think about what I'm going to say first. And then she immediately puts me on camera. And then she asks it again whenever it's on camera. It's interesting
how that worked. That she asked you, and then you went on camera, and then she asked you something different.
Yeah, she does that.
I would say do away with the pre-ask.
I think so too. I think so too. Yeah, like here's a good example. A really good example, and then you can say what you're going to say. It was basically, she asked me, she goes, oh, how did you become an expert? Why did you want to study drugs, right? And then whenever it came to being on camera, she goes, what made you interested in what made you become an expert in psychedelics? That's a very different question. It's a very different question, and they have completely different answers. And one of them is more upbeat, and the other one is like
they're both applicable,
hardcore, and they're both applicable. So I was like, okay, well, I liked what you asked the first time, and here's why. So I'm going to answer that question.
Well, I don't remember what I was going to ask, because that's what happens.
Oh.
But we just keep it going. I think it's a pretty cool thing what you're doing, especially seeing the company is called Your Authentic Reflections.
Yeah.
That's her photography company. And then they got another company along the same lines, Your Authentic Brand.
Yep.
and you could create your authentic. Because I think I did a video on my YouTube channel, The Authentic Me. It got all sorts of views on it. I was just open, transparent with my name, my phone number, where I live, what I do, what I've done. It was just open.
Nice.
And I think people are attracted to that. In fact, that happened on your TikTok, or Elizabeth's TikTok, that someone said, I resonate with this.
Yeah.
She actually engaged. And I think that's one of the better things to, like, you could even not talk about what you do, and people are going to listen to what you're talking about. They're going to go, I dig you, man. What do you do?
Yeah.
Wow, that's what I wanted to do. And now you got a customer or a prospect or a partner to collaborate with that's resonating.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you try to talk to somebody and make up a story. This is when I was a kid, and it's a bullshit story that's all dramatized with special effects and all that crap.
I promise I don't have to.
You've seen those things though,
stories.
with some of these gurus and stuff. You know, they talk about, I had a hard time. I was a drug dealer and I was addicted and I was in construction. Couldn't rub two nickels together and I didn't know what to do. I was broken.
Right.
I was a broken man. And now I'm making $15,000 every 3 seconds.
Right. And most of the time it's a lie. A lot of those times people are like,
it was a lie from the beginning. But if you told the authentic story that, man, I was making good money back in the 90s and now it's kind of hard. And like my story is the COVID thing. I blame it on the COVID thing because my whole thing was in the event industry and it stopped everything. So that's my blaming. But that's not, I mean, it's on me.
Yeah.
I had the freedom to do, I could have went and got a job or whatever. I'm in my position because I'm in my position. And people will resonate with it.
And that's exactly the same way I feel about it. I love the fact that you said that too. That's my position because that's my position. A lot of people have talked to me over the last several years about my work situation and, like, obviously we're running our own businesses and everything like that, right? But there's been moments where, I mean, financially we have to struggle and, I have to choose like how we're going to do things. And, I've tried to go get jobs and stuff and a lot of weird circumstances where through no fault of my own, just weird, odd things, all of my prospects would just fall through. And the universe, to me, it was the universe saying, nope, you belong right here. Because there's no other explanation for some of the weird crap.
Right.
And it was like, nope, you belong here. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. Stay here. And I'm like, am I supposed to struggle too? Damn you. But, hey, it's all right. You are where you are.
Well, that's where when you guys are doing what you're doing, I think it's really cool that you're working together to do it. She can start asking you the questions, and then it's therapeutical. That's a word.
I think it's a word now.
Therapeutic. That all of a sudden you get this, aha, that's what I'm missing in my business or my journey or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not going to come from you filling out a resume and getting interviewed and going and doing a job and then bargaining and negotiating a rate.
Right. 100%. Totally agree with you.
It's going to come out of, why are you so interested in drugs? And you start going, I'm not that interested in drugs. I'm actually interested in the psychedelics. But when I was a kid, I had these situations, and now you get it all healed, and that's healed. And now all of a sudden something comes in that says, don't you want to talk about psychedelics? Yeah, I want to talk about psychedelics. The drugs are behind me. I got this new thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's helpful that you guys can be able to do that, however you end up doing it. It's going to be, and I would be spontaneous. I would even I would try and get more traffic, hook up your phone too.
Yeah.
Just hook up both phones and just
do a live on both of them or something.
Yeah.
I don't have enough followers for a live yet.
Doesn't matter.
If you want to go follow me, at MycoShift.
But it doesn't have to be on TikTok.
I'll do it live, I promise.
Go follow him on TikTok. MycoShift. MYCO.
MYCO. MycoShift.
Shift with a F.
Yep.
Not a PH, a F with a F.
Yep. Yeah. And then Your Authentic Reflections with an S on the end. And it is a purple square with a gold A.
But you've got a phone that doesn't have to be on TikTok. Just throw it on a little tripod, and if you don't have a tripod, just prop it up against that leg right there and go live on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go live on
Absolutely.
Instagram. Go live on YouTube. Go live on.
I like doing it on TikTok. I don't actually like using my Facebook for certain things. That would be one of them. Like if I'm telling my story, I would prefer to do it on TikTok.
Well, maybe I'll get an extra phone and just let you use
Yeah.
it. You mind putting it on that?
I would put it on it. But yeah, wouldn't want to put it on Facebook. There's certain family members and stuff like that. Like I'm happy
Oh.
for them to watch this, but the other one is like, you know, I'm putting it out there. Yeah, could they go watch it? Yes, they could go watch it. But at the same token, it's like, you know, it makes me feel, it's a feeling. It makes
is.
me feel more anonymous.
And then if you really think about it, if there's a higher power and there's something to be healed, so you can be on this psychedelic journey that you're supposed to be on, if that's what higher power says,
Yeah.
your family's going to see the TikToks.
Oh, there totally are. I'm sure that some of my family's going to see the TikToks. I'm totally, it doesn't really bother me in some ways, but it makes me feel more free to tell the stories that I'm going to tell. And, you know, and the thing is, there's a lot that I can't tell because, I mean, growing up in the place and time that I did, there was a lot of stuff that, like, you know, I don't necessarily want to send somebody to jail.
Well,
I don't want to.
that's just
you
it.
know,
Being authentic doesn't mean you need to be stupid.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly it. I don't want to tell. I don't need to tell
Zip it.
horror stories.
Zip
to people,
it.
you
I'm
know?
in the room. I don't need to hear about your mafia stories.
There are some mafia stories.
Time to check the time and change the subject. Oh, it's 6 o'clock. Perfect timing. 6:04. Well, this has been fun. We won't get into those kind of topics because that shit can happen. You know, all of a sudden something weird and somebody decides to go off, and we don't want that.
I prefer to make sure that it's all in the white. You know, I just want to make sure that anything I'm talking about isn't necessarily going to be placeable, or, you know, some police aren't going to be like, oh, I'm going to start following this guy because I think I can bring up a cold case or something and get somebody in trouble. Like, I don't care. I don't want to, like, it just by accident even. I don't want to do it.
You're
even by
not doing
accident.
it for that purpose. You're doing it because you're looking to heal and
Help other people heal. Yeah, for me, like, I've done a lot of my healing. I've told people my story. Like, if you really want to know my story, make this into a real show and come in here and you know, contact us. Let us know that you want to make this into a real show.
Yeah, you can
and
sit
I
there
will
behind
be
the
raw.
camera. You can ask
I
the
will
questions.
tell people like hardcore, like real stories
You can
about
ask the
my
questions.
very crazy, violent life growing up in the middle of Los Angeles. You know, being in the middle of the shit. I mean, like, I'm happy to tell people those stories, but I'm never gonna put those stories on film. It's not gonna happen. It's the same thing as, like, you know, if you get a DNA test and you think that your dad was involved in gang violence or something like that, you're like, oh, I'm not gonna go get a DNA test. They might attach it to my dad, right? I mean, you know, if people were in those situations, they're gonna know that, and they're gonna go, I'm just not gonna do it, right? Well, it's the same thing. I'm not gonna put it on film because I have no idea what my kid might end up deciding whenever he's older is gonna traumatize him, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't want it to be out there forever.
Some things are better left unsaid.
Precisely. Or left in the past.
So we're not going to see anything else.
Wait, be nice.
Hey, you said something. Why did you say that?
Because you always say be nice.
But I'm not supposed to say anything. I'm supposed to. We're done. Zip it.